What's up, Wildside besties and baddies? I'm Bailey.
And I'm Chelsea, and we're here to walk you through the wild sides.
From homicides to hosticides and everything in between.
We're so glad you're here, so buckle up.
And enjoy the ride. Hello.
What is it? Buongiorno. Where are you right now?
I'm in Switzerland right now.
How do they say hello in Switzerland? Do we know?
Hello.
Hello.
It's like German. Hello.
Hello.
And then I was in Italy and it's buongiorno.
Buongiorno. How cool is that?
Super cool.
And it's your birthday.
It's my birthday.
I don't have a super cool montage for you. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I really thought about doing that, but then I don't even know how to do that.
But my montages wouldn't be good because it would just me being like, they smell like Funyuns. I hate that guy. It wouldn't even be funny.
I don't know. It'd be pretty good. So I sent you a life-side poster of Dominique. What's his name?
Arnold Dominique.
No, the other one that you hate, Restivo.
Danilo.
Danilo. I sent you a life-size poster of Danilo Restivo.
I should have gone to Potenza while I was in Italy and been like,
you should have.
Your homeboy
boy's trash. Hate that guy.
But I will say this week is going to be a really cool week, you guys, because we have a survivor interview.
Mm-hmm. I'm a survivor. I'm a blah, blah, blah. I don't get blah, blah. I only get stronger. I don't know the words. I'm finding that I am lyrically challenged. Like, I know a lot of songs, but I have no idea what the real lyrics are.
Me too. So this week and today, we're going to be covering the case of Patricia Wenskunas. And
so you were able to get her to sign off on letting us cover her case?
Yeah, I mean, she was pretty open to it.
That's awesome.
And while we're on that kind of topic, just so our listeners know, Patricia collaborated with us to put together this episode. I sent her my completed episode. She'd send me back revisions, asked me to take out some things, asked me to add some things, or to correct some things that were reported incorrectly. And she's been absolutely wonderful because we had a really great conversation. And this is all over email because she's a very busy woman. But I just asked her, like, is there an ethical way to cover experiences by survivors? Because that was my biggest concern, was like, can we do a good job with sharing your experience? And she was like, yeah, I mean, I think that there's an ethical way to do it. And I think it really is to focus on the, recovery of the victim and not victim blaming, obviously. Right. And so a lot of this episode is going to be relating it to the average person, right? How any of us could find ourselves in this position.
Yeah.
And then on Friday, we actually interview Patricia and we talk about this experience. We talk about the work she's done in the company she's built afterwards. And so she's just absolutely an incredible human being. And I think you guys are going to really find yourselves personally tied to this episode today. And then you get to hear from her and how she got through it on Friday.
This is actually news to me. I knew that you had talked about, we had kind of gone around on should we see if Patricia would sign off on letting us cover her story. So that's exciting, number one, for me. But number two, speaking of Patricia in general and the interview with her, it is definitely going to be one of our more hope-filled episodes. Because she truly has, when she was given a big old lemon, she has worked just tirelessly to turn it into lemonade. And it has been very inspiring and very hope-filled.
Yeah, she really is an incredible human being. And I'm just really honored and grateful that she's given us the opportunity to share her experience and, share her voice and the work she does. So.
All right. Well, without further ado, I'm excited to hear it in its entirety. I'm excited to hear all of the details because I know the rough draft, if you will, of this story, quickly what she had explained to us during the interview, but I'm really excited to hear all the ins and outs of it.
Yeah. And so we are going to actually start this in the year 2002. Okay. And so in 2002, Patricia, she was 32 at the time, and she was a single mother living in Irvine, California. She had a very close relationship with her 12-year-old son, Nathaniel, but Patricia really found herself struggling, a lifelong struggle. She had endured a whole bunch of trauma throughout her life, beginning when she was a little girl, when she was about 8 years old. And this became a beginning point of a long battle with body image issues and disordered
Mm.
eating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so her eating disorder began when she was only 8 years old, and it would become a struggle throughout her adolescence and into her early adult years.
Wow. That is shocking for me to hear that it started when she was 8. A
Yeah.
that seems like a pretty young age. Maybe it's not. I would love to get the statistics on how often we see that in adolescence, but that does seem pretty young.
As far as the eating disorder component?
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah, not the
Yeah.
trauma component, but the eating disorder component.
Yeah. And, I'm very open to acknowledge my limitations as a therapist, and I am not a specialist when it comes to eating disorders. But I do know that child abuse is one of the most influential risk factors in
Mm.
increasing the severity of eating disorders,
Okay.
right? And so there are lots of different kind of subcomponents. So you can have like the preoccupation with shape and weight, the maladaptive eating, severity of symptoms. They're all really directly related
Mhm.
to child abuse and neglect.
Mhm.
And so it really is no surprise that, she developed an eating disorder because of the trauma that she went through.
Yeah.
And so by the time that Patricia was 32 years old, she was still battling with her eating disorder. She
Mhm.
found herself in a binging and purging cycle, all too
Mhm.
common within the realm of eating disorders, and she knew she had to do something to address it.
Yeah.
If not really for herself, then for her son. And she's a really verbal advocate about, being the best mother that she could be, showing up for her son, really taking care of herself in every way she could.
Yeah.
She did sought help several times for her eating disorder over the years and was working to get to a place where she could manage.
Mhm.
However, like most of us, when we have a lifelong history of trauma or abuse, it absolutely demolishes our sense of self-esteem and our sense of self.
Yeah.
One of the things that I just kind of wanted to include at this point when it comes to trauma, this isn't necessarily in a textbook, but the way that I describe it to people, because one of the most common, the top things that I hear is, well, I wasn't in a war, or, I didn't have this like super horrific big thing happen to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And one of the greatest ways that I've heard trauma explained succinctly and how I've adapted it in my own language is trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you,
Mm. Mhm.
right? So two people could get into a car accident and they could both walk away, but one person would have no problem getting back in and driving, and the other person would have like crippling panic attacks around driving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so one of like the subcomponents of PTSD, it really affects your reality around your sense of self, where you tend to blame yourself. You tend to, you know, you're pretty hard on yourself and make you really convinced that it's your thought or it's your fault. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I say all of this because I want y'all to keep that in mind as we go throughout this process.
Mhm.
And so in June of 2001, Patricia decided to seek some help to get in front of the struggles that she'd had for years. She found herself at a 24-hour fitness near Irvine. When she had gotten into the gym after some time, her gym had told her that they actually had a personal trainer in mind who they thought would be an absolute perfect match for her. So Patricia was super excited. She was stoked to hear this and to have this recommendation. And she was quickly introduced to a man by the name of Jeffrey Kelavos.
Okay.
The first day they met, Jeffrey had told Patricia that he was a registered nurse and he also had knowledge in eating disorders.
Hmm.
What a great fit,
I
right?
was going to say that's an amazing combination to use your medical knowledge and then also kind of a niche eating disorder knowledge and be a personal trainer and working with nutrition. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. In my mind, if I were Patricia, I'd be like, this is kind of a perfect scenario. Like
Yeah.
he's a nurse, so he has the medical expertise. He obviously is a personal trainer, so he can understand, the physiological components,
Sure.
overlap with his knowledge of an eating disorder. It'd be a perfect thing for me. And the assumption was that this dude, that Jeffrey, had a pretty good reputation if the gym manager was recommending Jeffrey as a good fit for Patricia.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if I walk into a gym and they're like, hey, there's this, guy that'd be a good fit for you, I wouldn't even question it.
Mm-mm. Well, and you're also seeking help. You're really meaning you're very open to suggestions. You're open to if I were seeking help in that way, if somebody was like, hey, let me point you in this direction, I would be more than grateful. I would be so excited to say, this is perfect. Yes, sign me up. I'm ready.
Right. And so soon enough, Patricia began working with Jeffrey towards her goals. And initially, Jeffrey was super supportive. He was really kind and he seemed to be a very highly passionate person about what he did and
Hmm.
helping Patricia with her struggles.
Hmm.
She felt safe with him because he was a professional, right? Just
Hmm.
like any of us would feel if we went to a gym or to a doctor or whatever.
Yeah.
After all, he was married. He had a 2-year-old little girl, and he was really boundaried with her. So there were absolutely no red flags early on in this professional relationship that indicated otherwise.
Yeah.
He guided her through every exercise, correcting her form, providing her suggestions for workout plans and goals, which is what a personal trainer does.
Well, and two, I have to also think when we talk about boundaries and barriers and things like that, that's always a little bit, that's, in my opinion, that's a little different when you're in a medical or I'm going to even say just health setting, because again, it's not weird for somebody to touch your lower back, touch your knee, like to just to, again, correct or to check or assess.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so these ideas of like, well, that's a boundary is not really there. You can't tell, your gynecologist, if you will, that's a boundary for me. They're doing
Right.
their job, right? You know what I mean? Like that's a weird thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And naturally, she's voluntarily there. She's wanting help and she's open to doing exactly what he's instructing her to do.
Sure.
Right? That's why we pay him. And we are desperate for the expertise to fix us,
Yes.
and I think all of us have had different struggles, whether it's body image, weight, eating issues, it doesn't really matter.
Sure.
But it's all enticing for us to have somebody who has all of the answers, right?
Sure. I mean, even if it's financial issues, you know what I mean? Whatever your issue is, you do get to a point where I think desperation is a great word, where you're like,
Yeah.
I'm desperate for a positive change. I'm here for it. Sign me up.
Yeah. And Patricia was not immune from this either. She struggled significantly with her self esteem, her value and worth because of the lifelong trauma that she endured. And that
Yeah.
added that complexity to this whole situation, right?
Mhm.
But over the course of the next 9 months, things started to shift in Jeffrey's demeanor and approach during their interactions and training sessions. There were things that he began doing and saying that initially did not really raise any major alarms or red flags, but they were pretty disconcerting for Patricia.
Mhm.
He would stand back and bark instructions at her instead of like getting on her level, showing her how to do this. It became a very
Almost
authoritative.
like a drill sergeant.
Yeah. And one of the things that I included here was kind of to touch on power dynamics and power differentials.
Mm.
Obviously, this is a perfect scenario for this individual, in this case, Jeffrey, who's the personal trainer. He is the person with the power in this dynamic, right?
Mhm.
He is literally physically standing over her. He is professionally standing over her, right? Like
I was
he's in
gonna
a
say,
wall of power.
right, like he has the knowledge, he has the expertise, he has the experience, and he has her money. Like she's paying him to
Right.
perform a duty.
And he began slowly taking hold and control of Patricia's diet. He would tell her what she could eat and what she could not eat.
Okay.
And, to be fair, this might not seem weird, right? Because again, this dude, he's a registered nurse, he has experience with eating disorders. And so Patricia was just like, okay, obviously he knows better than I do because I haven't been able to kind of pull myself out of this eating disorder up until this point. So I'm going to listen to what he has to say.
Yeah.
He would tell her what she could and could not consume wholly, what she was allowed to drink, eat, all of it. He instructed her on which vitamins were appropriate for her to take, all falling within the realm of what personal trainers' expertise are supposed to be around, right? The problem is that Patricia very openly would describe herself as somewhat of a people pleaser.
Mhm.
And this dynamic came to light. It showed in this dynamic, and she really just wanted to believe that he had the answers, and she was very compliant,
Yeah.
right? If he told her this, you eat this, you don't eat this, these are the vitamins you take, how many times a day. She's, on top of being a people pleaser, and likely as a symptom of her trauma, she's also, following suit.
Mhm.
He would tease her that she was a wallflower, and it was to enhance her insecurities even more, pointing out that she struggled with the self esteem and confidence.
He was pointing that out to her.
Yes.
Mm.
As these sessions and his approach began to shift week after week, month after month, it soon became apparent that Jeffrey wasn't the same smiling, jovial man she initially met at the beginning of their trainer trainee relationship. He soon was instilling highly manipulative and controlling behaviors, but very, very slowly, to the point to where you don't even really notice it when it's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So Patricia would share very openly with him because she was an open book and trusted him implicitly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started to make comments and statements during their sessions about her not needing like a therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist. He would tell her, I'm your therapist. You don't need to pay for a therapist. You're paying me. I'm your therapist.
Oh.
He would be her listening ear. So when she would process all of her insecurities, all of her pains, all of her vulnerabilities while they were in their sessions, he is taking all of this in.
Mm-hmm. He's a one-stop shop.
He is a one-stop
He's
shop.
like Dollar General for me. I can get all my things there.
And he would start to tell her things like, I'm a nurse. I'm a personal trainer. I know eating disorders. I know diet and exercise. I'm the one with the name tag.
Oh, okay, Jeffrey.
It reminds me of Ben Stiller's character from Happy Gilmore.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Right?
He's the attendant or whatever, the nurse on call or whatever it's called.
Yeah, he was like, fun time's over,
Yeah, yes.
So essentially, as long as she followed his exact instructions, he would guide her to her desired freedoms. But again, it became more controlling and manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey eventually began making Patricia work out in front of mirrors. Now, this is the thing, right? Most people would be like, well, yeah, you're in a gym. You're going to work out in front of mirrors because you want to make sure that you have your form, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
But anyone who has dealt at all with
body image
at all with body image issues, eating disorders, anything like that, it is definitely not the recommended intervention to work out solely in front of mirrors.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any clinical training in addressing this stuff. Like, I don't care. Just because you're a registered nurse and you say you have an understanding of eating disorders, psychologically and clinically doesn't mean that you're necessarily certified to address that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those are two different ponds.
Yeah. And so by 9 months in, Jeffrey Kelavos was controlling Patricia's every aspect: what she ate, what she drank, how she exercised, where and when, how long, what movements, everything. Controlling anything that he could touch or have any sort of considerable influence over that overlapped with the gym and working out.
Well, but not only that, I mean, the fact that he's saying you don't need to go to a therapist, I mean, he's starting to cross into other aspects of her life and control that. For someone's, I mean, I'm waiting for him to be like, and bring your taxes to me because I'm a CPA.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like a couple of things that I wanted to bring up here is just like having just a little kind of quick discussion about like predatory grooming. So just what you've been listening to, Chelsea, I know you know a little bit of Patricia's experience, but you're starting to get more of the details in this recording. What are you noticing just from what you've heard so far?
Well, I guess I would say the speed of it, meaning it starts out slow, nice, and it slowly turns into, now I want you to do this, and now I want you to do that. It's almost like a compounding thing, right? Like, we established this and you will do what I tell you to do at this level. So now let's bump it up a level to see, are you going to do what I want you to do at this level? Am I guessing it right?
No, yeah, that's all super valid observations.
What were you wanting me to guess? What were you wanting me to say?
No, I just wanted to, because I want the listeners, like when they're listening to this and we're talking about like this progression with her personal trainer.
Right.
Does it seem odd, right? Because we're removed from it. We're emotionally removed from it.
No, it does not seem odd at all. I mean, this is just like, oh, it's getting a little bit more intense. Like, I would, in my mind, I'd be like, I mean, I don't feel super comfortable working out in front of mirrors, but maybe it is good for me. He knows best. I mean, he does have the name tag. He does wear the polo with the 24-hour fitness logo on it type of thing. Right. I thought you had a prize for me for getting it right.
No, just my pride.
Oh, okay.
Just my pride for you. No, I just wanted to make sure that we're really focusing on, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like how this trickles into something really big.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying, is the speed of it. It would be one thing if 2 weeks in, he's all of a sudden doing this, and then you're like, oh, crap, this is weird. I don't even know this dude. But it's been over the course of close to a year at this point, right? Like 9 months, something like that. 9, 10 months.
Yeah. And so
So,
you've already developed an attachment of some sort, a
yeah,
rapport of some sort with this
sure.
person. And so by April of 2002, Jeffrey was now insisting that Patricia sell her treadmill that she had been using at home because it wasn't good for her. He insisted that she sell it and redirect her efforts back into the gym with his guidance and expertise.
So had she kind of laid off of the personal training sessions and had transitioned to just kind of like working out at the house, things like that?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think that this was just another maneuver for him to have total control,
Okay. Okay. I don't
right? He
want you
didn't
to
have
work
anything.
kind of like
Mhm.
I don't want you to even work out at your house. Like I don't want you to work out unsupervised.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so even though that Jeffrey and Patricia had never exercised outside of the gym, on April 4th of 2002, they had made a decision that he would stop by her Irvine house to see how much she could get for the treadmill.
Okay.
And this is where things take a hairpin turn.
Okay.
So when Jeffrey got there, he showed up to her house, acting as if it were absolutely totally normal by walking inside, did not ring the doorbell, did not knock. He was just standing at the door, looking in, and just walked in her house.
Hmm. Okay.
And Patricia talks about this, and she recalls that it was a little weird. Like there were some red flags that it was weird that he showed up and just literally walked inside of her house, but she kind of just ignored that and just wrote it off.
Yeah.
And again, if we were to put ourselves in her shoes, if this were my personal trainer, he knows where I live. I've told him, right? We have a schedule for him to come check this out, try to help me sell my treadmill. If he just kind of, if I turned a corner and he was standing in the entrance of my house, I would initially think that was weird, but then I would justify it and be like, well, maybe the door was open and he just assumed that he could walk in because we had an appointment.
I wouldn't think it's weird at all. My personality, I would just be like, "Oh, hey, good. I'm glad you let yourself in." Like
Yeah.
that's scary. Seriously, Bailey. Like I would just be like, "Oh, cool. Yeah. What else? You're here."
Yeah. Yeah. So when he stepped inside her house, he immediately spotted the treadmill, said that the one that she was advertising to sell. But before the discussion came about regarding the treadmill, the price, the workout plan, about selling it, he turned his attention to Patricia. He grabbed his backpack, asked for a cup to mix a drink, and she gave him a cup and a spoon. He pulled out a chocolate drink and a small yellow pill. Jeffrey at this point told Patricia that he had found a new miracle pill that would help her lose weight, that
Yeah.
she would lose about 8 pounds in a week.
Hmm.
So he started to mix it. She noticed a sliver of blue swirling in the liquid drink and asked him what it was. And he shrugged really casually, saying, "Don't worry about it, just a little something."
Hmm.
So she took it.
Okay.
Now,
Ooh, I don't.
I know we keep stopping, but I think that this is an important piece for this specific case.
Mhm.
If your personal trainer comes and says, and you have a history of eating disorders and body image issues, and he says, "I have a pill for you that's going to help you lose 8 pounds in a week." This is a nurse. Obviously, he knows what he's giving me and I can trust it.
Yeah.
And then, he says, "Here, don't worry about it. Just take it." You're going to trust that. Most people will.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, yes.
I mean, fair though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so what happened next is the beginning of this really horrific experience.
Mm.
Patricia ended up blacking out and wasn't able to recall anything for about a 30-minute span of time. When she did wake up, she was dizzy and disoriented, and she noticed that she was laying in her son's bed and she was only wearing one of her son's shirts, but she absolutely knew she did not put it on.
Oh gosh.
How terrifying would that be?
Ugh. I don't. I don't like being out of control. And so that is horrifying for me to feel like I don't have control over my thought process or my physical movement. Like if I don't have control over my decisions, that's a
Yeah.
horrifying thought for me.
And when she woke up, she tried to speak, but it was like she was under anesthesia. Like her mouth wouldn't work and her words just wouldn't come out.
Right. Right.
And when she woke up, she remembers feeling like she was wrapped in this like tight cocoon and she was gasping for air because Jeffrey had saran wrapped her entire face.
What?
And then over that, he wrapped a towel over it. So she wakes up from a blackout, can't really move, can't really talk, and she has saran wrap wrapped around her face and a towel. And then out of nowhere, Jeffrey appears, jumps on top of her, disarming her, and she starts trying to plead with him. I'll give you money, I'll give you sex, I'll give you whatever you want, but please just don't kill my baby.
Oh,
Because
gosh.
she was thinking about her son, Nathaniel.
Hmm.
And this is when Jeffrey began mercilessly assaulting her. He began punching her, hitting her head against the wall, and just horrifically assaulting her. And he started screaming, "Stop screaming. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill Nathaniel."
What the heck happened? Like, why did what the heck is going on?
I don't know. At that point, as soon as he said that he was going to kill Nathaniel, Patricia, like something in her kind of just snapped.
Napped, yeah.
And it was like at that moment, she might not have had good self-esteem or value or worth for herself, but she absolutely had that for her son.
Sure.
And when he said he was going to kill Nathaniel, that is when something happened inside of her. And up until that point, she said that she didn't think that she would have the strength to fight him off. But when he threatened her son, something snapped and she knew she couldn't let that happen.
Yeah.
And so, all kind of within a breath, she was able to peel and tear the saran wrap and the towel off of her head.
Hmm.
And in a panic, absolute survival mode, she searched for a way to escape her attacker, who clearly wanted her dead. And she noticed that the loft upstairs overlooked the front room, and she could not get to the step of the balcony overlooking the front room, but she could find a way to maneuver to the other side that looked over the kitchen. And so somehow, literally within like seconds, right? 1 minute he's on top of her, trying to suffocate her, trying to kill her. She gets the saran wrap, gets the towel off of her head, runs to a portion of the loft that she feels that she can escape. Somehow she managed to get to the edge, get one leg over the balcony, and committed to throwing herself down essentially an entire story of her house to escape this man.
Oh, golly.
She wasn't sure if she jumped, if she fell, or if Jeffrey pushed her, but when she fell over the loft balcony and went over the wall, she had left finger drag marks along the wall and on the banister on her way down.
Oh.
Miraculously, somehow, she landed in the kitchen without any broken legs and was able to pick herself up from a 12-foot drop, throw the door open, and run to a neighbor's house. When she got there, she told them what happened, begged them to call 911, and within minutes, police showed up along with paramedics. So within a span of, a couple of hours, this is what happened. This is what transpired.
I'm just trying to like picture this whole thing. And I'm like, why? Like, why is what snapped? What changed? I just I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah. And so Patricia, she was at the neighbor's house, and the
And she
paramedics
only has a t-shirt on, right?
yes. And so paramedics showed up, and she was taken to a nearby hospital, and then she ended up being taken to another one where she had to undergo the humiliating process of enduring a rape kit
Oh,
and having an examination to document her wounds at the hands of her attacker.
oh my goodness.
She talks a lot about this in our interview with her, and just how the process of like victims constantly being re-victimized throughout this whole process. And you're gonna hear that theme in this episode, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She had shared with investigators and medical staff the name of her attacker, that he was her personal trainer, that he had drugged her, brutally attacked her, and assaulted her.
Mm-hmm.
The detectives, after her, initial forensic examination was completed, the detectives made their way to her bedside where they began to ask her some questions.
Mm-hmm.
She recalls the detective saying, Patricia, these are going to be some very difficult questions that we have to ask you. It's going to sound like we're doubting or blaming or questioning you, but we're not. We just need to ask these questions that we can ensure we get an arrest and prosecution in this case.
I really appreciate that they said that to her. I'm really thankful that they were like, we understand how awful. I mean, no one can know unless you've been through it, but the fact that they had acknowledged like this is going to sound like this, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And she would go on to say that her experience, going through sharing with them what had happened with the attack, she said that the officers and the medical staff were absolutely phenomenal. They were amazing, that they were thorough, they were supportive, they were kind. And she was she was saying that this was such an important piece early on in this process after
Yeah.
going through such a traumatic, horrific event. I mean, literally surviving attempted murder.
Right.
And she's having to have all of these intrusive exams. She's having to be asked these intrusive questions.
Right.
And luckily, she had these really great, wonderful individuals to help her in those early points in the process.
Yeah.
And so this is another key point of just like what victims go through in these situations. And so she's in a hospital, right? She's just gone through these examinations.
Yeah.
And the officers are explaining to her that these are questions we have to ask, so on and so forth. And then they tell her that Jeffrey had left 2 messages on her phone, and they were able to recover it, and they needed to play it for her to see if she could, identify any information, positively identify the voice and that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so Patricia was kind enough to share those with us. And so I think it's
Oh,
almost like 6 minutes total. I'm just going to play just so you can kind of hear what she had to endure, and just kind of put yourself in the position of, you just went through this horrific assault. You're having to listen to the messages from the guy who assaulted you.
okay.
Here we go.
Patricia. I don't know what to do. I said he took your money home. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I didn't mean to bring you in. I just kill my daughter when I don't give her the money. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I didn't mean for you to be involved in this. I don't know what to do anymore. I didn't mean to the money. They took pictures of my daughter at her school. I'm fucking, I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Patricia. Oh, God, what am I doing? Oh, God. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm sorry, I just killed her. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I don't know what to do anymore. You show me pictures of her playing in school and they tell me that they're going to do it to her. Oh, my God, what did I do? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go. I just needed the money to pay them off so they can get off me. So they can stay with my daughter. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Oh my God, I don't know what they're going to do to her. Oh my God, what am I doing? I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I don't know if you, oh my God. What's wrong with me, God? I don't know what to do. Sorry. I don't know what to do. I hurt you. They're going to hurt my daughter now. They're going to do something to her. I don't know what to do. Oh, they're going to kill her and do some worse. Oh, that's what they... Oh, fuckers. I've been asking my whole life. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Patricia. You're such a wonderful person. I'm so sorry you had to be innocent. Oh, please. Please forgive me. They're going to kill her. They're going to kill her. End of message. Thursday, April 4th at 3:21 p.m. Patricia. I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I can do. Basically, right now, I don't know what to do. Sitting there looking at my daughter, eating her favorite snack, and I don't know what to do. I know what I did. unbelievably wrong. Unbelievably wrong to anyone, let alone you. I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. My daughter's so beautiful. I love her so much. I love my daughter so much. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I don't know what to do now. I'm so scared. I don't know what made me do it. I'm just so scared for my daughter. I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. Stop holding her. I'm so scared for her. What did I do this for? I'm hurting so many people right now. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I'm so sorry. I'm never going to see my daughter again. She's going to be taken away from me. She's never going to know. Oh, I love her so much. I just love her so much. I didn't even mean to hurt her. I'm trying to protect her and I'm going to hurt her. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so scared. Oh my God, what have I done? Oh my God. Oh God. She's so beautiful. I love you. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so scared. Oh God. Okay, Annie. Oh my God. End of message.
Almost say what?
Wild, right? Between the two messages, he said the word sorry 113 times.
See, and okay, my mind, and maybe it's just been the week that I've had, I'm like, are you sorry because you're going to get caught?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that sounds quite authentic because she's at the hospital, because she ran out of the house.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the perspective, right? Is the motive behind the messages were desperate attempts at manipulating her further to get away with what he had done. Right? Playing into the fact, because he knew her very well. They had an intimate but boundaried professional relationship up until this point. He knew her insecurities. He knew that she was a people pleaser. He knew that she had a history of trauma. He knew all of these things. And everything that he says in this voicemail, right, is really targeting those kind of chinks in the armor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was begging for her forgiveness, likely hoping that, you know, if he apologized profusely, begged for forgiveness, she wouldn't call the police and report to him that he literally just tried to kill her.
Right.
Like hours before, right?
I mean, pretty much what I heard, like how my brain translated that was, if you do this, I'm going to be so much trouble and my daughter's going to suffer. You don't want that, do you, Patricia? You don't want my beautiful daughter who I love so much to suffer. Now, do you? Do you, Patricia? Like, that's the only thing I could hear in that. And again, maybe it's just because I'm kind of jaded this week, but I was just like, what do you always say? No.
No. And I think you got to listen to your instincts on that, right? Like if that's your knee-jerk reaction. And one of my favorite things that I typed in this whole episode was Jeffrey met his match. He must have underestimated Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not think that he was expecting the tenacity and the strength that she had,
Mm-hmm.
because she had, in fact, fought him back and escaped. She had survived the fall from her second story of her house to her first story. She got up and ran all the way to the neighbor's house, went through, you know, the early stages of an investigation, made a police report, And this wasn't going to be the very beginning of her not stopping there. Don't
Now,
stop.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a psychology degree. I don't have a master's in anything to do with mental health. But what I have done is I've watched a whole bunch of the Discovery Channel with my kids growing up. And I can tell you one thing, when lions are on the prowl, they don't go after just any gazelle. They go after the ones that are limping. They go after the ones that are somehow hurt or young or something like that. They always go after easy targets. All the predators that I've watched on the Discovery Channel, they pick you out because they see a flaw in you and they think that they can overtake you.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine that it's very different in the Homo sapien world.
Yeah. And I agree with you. And I think in Patricia talks about this in her interview of how she was very vulnerable. She was very, she had a lot of vulnerabilities and he played right into those. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after going through all of these questions, miraculously being discharged from the hospital with non-life-threatening physical injuries, at the end of the night, they ended up dropping her off at her friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
And her friends were standing in the doorway of their home, anticipating her arrival, ready to help her, support her after such horrific events of the night. And her friends would go on to say later on that they'll never forget how she looked when she got there to the house. They said that her usually bright blue eyes had turned black as if my soul had left my body.
Really?
They were like, her eyes were not blue that night.
Oh, that gives me chills.
And we remembered our interview, she has beautiful bright blue eyes.
Mm-hmm. I do remember
and her
that.
friends were like, they were dark. They were dark black.
Oh, that gives me chills.
Yeah. Now, kind of maybe a point that we might have forgotten about, but definitely very important. Remember, she has a 12-year-old son, Nathaniel.
Mm-hmm.
So by all that is wonderful in this world, he was not at home at the time of the attack. He actually had been playing video games at GameWorks with some of his friends.
Oh, wow.
So luckily he wasn't there, because we don't know what potentially could have happened if he was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she got to a safe place with her friends. She was reunited with her son. And it was, finally she was able to kind of potentially start getting out of survival mode, but she probably wouldn't from a nervous system standpoint for a long time. But the horrific deal for her really just had begun. And this is really the beginning. And I know I've said it a couple of times, but the beginning of the re-victimization she would endure at the hands of entities meant to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
And so after this happened, right after that initial investigation, they had her statements, all of that stuff. Jeffrey Kelavos was charged with deliberate, premeditated, attempted murder, burglary in the first degree, assault with a deadly weapon, and criminal threat. But this is where things start getting really infuriating, okay? So despite the obvious evidence of her attack, and so mostly when I say the obvious evidence, so there are pictures of her that were taken at the hospital, and there are bruises and lacerations and lots of wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a rape kit done, but her rape kit came back as inconclusive.
Oh.
When she underwent the forensic exam, there were not any drugs found in her system other than allergy medication. He did not steal anything of value from her house.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think I'm leading into when I'm saying this? Obviously she was attacked. There was evidence of that, but from a DNA perspective, the rape kit was inconclusive.
Right.
There was no drugs in her system other than an allergy medication, and there was not anything stolen, anything of major value stolen from her home.
Well, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? So if somebody is there and brutally attacks you and drugs you and threatens to kill you, and there's no evidence of that, then what do you have? That's a he said, she said.
Yeah. And I think that this is a thing that victims face a lot, right, in the criminal justice system. And so after some time had passed and Patricia was left to try to begin to heal from the attack and prepare to face him in court, she received a call from her appointed victim advocate. So her advocate called up Patricia and was like, hey, you really need to get to the courthouse right away. So Patricia hopped up, got dressed, quickly made her way to the courthouse. When she got there, she saw her victim advocate, asked her what was going on. And that's when she was informed that Jeffrey Kelavos had in fact admitted to the brutal attack the assault and the attempted murder. He made a confession. He signed along the dotted line. And this was all really good news, right?
Sure.
So from this, the DA decided that we're going to take a 2-year plea agreement.
We're going to do a what?
A 2-year plea deal.
What does that mean?
That means that they're going to plea him out and he's going to do 2 years for attempted murder, burglary, assault.
No, no, wrong answer. I'm going to bubble D, none of the above.
Yeah. In that moment, so her victim advocate is saying, yes, he agreed. He gave a confession. He signed his written confession. And the DA is like, yeah, cool. We'll do a little magic handshake, give him 2 years for literally trying to kill another person. And she would go on to say that she remembers in that moment, all she could remember, she got up, went down the corridor and threw up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this isn't happening.
Yeah. Like this is not happening. She was an absolute horror and disgust to learn that there was even a plea deal and that this man would only be serving 2 years in jail.
And of course, my question, and I'm sure it's because of the podcasts that we do, but I'm like, is he getting a psych evaluation? Do we know if he's going to be potentially like a potential threat when he's released? Is he going to re-offend? Like, this is not, is he going to be banned from any sort of personal training job? Like,
is he going to lose his nursing license?
Yeah, is he going to lose his license? Like, what safeguards are going to be put into place? Yeah, I did it, and I'm sorry is okay when you accidentally throw a baseball through a window. That's okay. Not when you try to kill another human being.
Yeah. And she was like, y'all, this dude literally tried to kill me. He threatened to kill my son, and he's getting 2 years. He's getting 2 years. Right? And kind of what you were saying, Chelsea, is she was terrified that if he got away with attempted murder, then he would go on to kill somebody else.
Sure.
Or equally as horrifying, he would come back and kill her or her son.
Yeah, come back and finish the job.
Like, this is not a funny situation, but I'm laughing at the fact of she's so badass. So she's so badass that she was like, no, nope. And so she decided to picket the courthouse. And so she got a bunch of her friends, made signs, and gathered out in the parking lot of the courthouse and was just like, no, can't do this.
What is it that you're always saying, Bailey? Don't confuse my kindness for weakness.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of one of those. It probably kind of unlocked this whole, like, don't confuse my kindness or my, tolerance for weakness.
Yeah. And so at the next hearing, so she's like getting her friends together. She's picketing the courthouse. Like, I just love this so much. And at the next hearing, when the sentencing was going to be officially announced, the judge looked at the DA and said, well, your victim is here today. She doesn't like you. She doesn't like me. She doesn't like your plea deal. And she's picketing my courthouse. So if she wants a trial, let's give her a trial. I'm going to throw out this plea deal and give the defendant a chance at trial.
Good. I don't know why it took picketing for that, but good.
Right. And I'm going to circle back to this judge a little bit later. So y'all just hold that little nugget of information. And so the judge was like, all right, cool. She wants a trial. She doesn't think it's fair. Then we're going to give this dude a trial. Now, all the charges did go before the jury, but the jury could not find him guilty of the charges. Some charges, even though there was enough evidence to convict him. And some of the reason was because of the judge's behavior.
That's a confusing statement for me. You're going to need to elaborate, because I didn't think that a judge was able to sway a jury.
Right.
Not ethically.
Here's the key word. So throughout this process, this judge really re-victimized Patricia. She was condescending. The judge was condescending, was awful. She would interrupt things to do other misdemeanor cases. She'd talk to the jurors about her scarves and her trips. The judge would question Patricia more than his attorney did. And like, during this process, she had brought her grandmother's rosary and her son's photo with her to keep her strength. And the judge stopped, came over to her, took it out of her hands, and said she needed to set it down because it was making too much noise.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely it does.
And so all of this behavior on behalf of the judge affected the jury's involvement decisions regarding the situation.
Sure. Yeah, that's influential behavior.
Right. Because of this, the jury came back and found Jeffrey Kelavos guilty of misdemeanor assault with a deadly weapon and criminal threats.
No attempted murder?
No. Nope. And so after the trial, before the sentencing, right? Trial and then sentencing, the judge ended up tossing out part of the charges before deciding upon a sentence for Jeffrey Kelavos. And so what ended up happening after a trial, after the sentencing, is he got 120 days in jail, 5 years of anger management, and 5 years of probation.
Whatever.
Are you so pissed right now?
Whatever. Like,
Chelsea's biting her fingernails. She's so mad. 120
to
days in
me,
jail.
that almost feels like that was like that. It feels like there was a mission. Like, I'm going to make sure that this dude gets less time and a less severe sentence
Because you
just
picked a different courthouse.
because, yeah, just because you cut into my scarf buying time.
All right. And we're going to circle back to this judge, okay? So talking about this whole process and re-victimization, we have to remember, everybody, that Patricia, starting way back at the beginning of the story, is being groomed by a predator, unbeknownst to her. Then she gets horrifically assaulted, attacked by a predator. Then she has to be violated again and again, emotionally, physically, right? To give evidence to people that need evidence to put said predator away.
Sure.
Then she goes to the court system, and some players in this game are not sympathetic to what she went through. And at one point, the DA even approached her while showing her like a blown up picture of a bloody knife from one of the murder cases that he was working on. And he said, "You should take your son to the pumpkin patch. You should go live your life. You survived. I have other cases in which the victims were murdered and they're no longer here."
Okay. I just didn't know that that much audacity could make it through like the metal detectors at the courthouse. Like, I just didn't know that you could sneak that much audacity into a place.
Yeah. So the judge is like, "You're making too much noise with your son's picture and your rosary. Okay. And I'm really mad that you're picketing my courthouse because they decided to make a plea deal for 2 years for attempted murder. And now Patricia's sitting there after being shown a picture of a bloody knife, being like, you should be really grateful that you lived, and like, don't be so negative." And so she had to sit back and try to swallow the information that the dude who attacked her, who tried to kill her, would serve 4 months in jail, get some probation, and she would be left with a lifetime of trauma and like virtually no justice served.
Well, and my thought is like, or Mr. DA with the knife picture, or how about you put this guy away before you're holding up another saran wrap knife picture of another dead victim? How about I'm saving you guys the hassle of having to go through another murder victim?
Yeah.
Maybe thank you. Maybe thank you that you're making sure that people who are predatorial are put where they need to be. But no,
Right.
yeah, let me go to the pumpkin patch and just feel sorry for myself on the side. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. May I have another?
And so after this, so now comes the time for restitution, right? And this is supposed to be the part where the perpetrator is to make the victim at least financially whole, right? They pay back because you can't take it away, right? So you
Right.
try to give some restitution. So when Patricia approached this process and providing all of her receipts, all the documentation, everything she had paid for herself because of this man's crimes, she recalls standing in front of the judge when this judge literally scoffed at her. The judge said, "You're expecting him to pay for your bed and your sheets and your pillow. Why would I award that?" And Patricia said, "Because he attacked me in my bed. I couldn't keep the mattress, the box spring, the sheets, the pillows. I couldn't sleep there. I threw them in the trash and I relocated." And the judge said, "Well, I'm not going to honor that." And so out of about $54,000 that Patricia had to spend of her own money out of her own pocket, including moving into a new house, She received about $800 total, and with the first restitution check ringing in at a whopping $54.
Cool.
And she would go on to say that she remembers when she got that in the mail, and she was sitting in her car at a storage unit, and she opened the envelope and saw that $54, and she just ripped it in half and sat there and just cried.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to do with $54?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the DA with the blown up bloody knife picture would be like, just be grateful you have $54. Some people don't have any. And so after everything that she'd been through, okay, being a victim at the hands of Jeffrey Kelavos, enduring insufferable trauma at the hands of her perpetrator and the judicial system, something changed inside of Patricia. She had an epiphany at some point in her journey, and she would go on to think that if the courts won't see her as a victim, as properly see her as a victim at the hands of this assailant, then she won't either. I'll be a survivor, I'll thrive. And so in the wake of the attack, Patricia found the lack of sufficient resources available to crime victims almost as traumatic as the incident itself. And this is where she found her calling. And so can we just take a minute to talk about how amazing this person is?
Yeah.
So not wanting future victims to run into the same problem, Patricia decided to take a lack of resources into her own hands and actually do something about it. She was inspired to start Crime Survivors in 2003, just after a year of her brutal attack. Without a building from which to operate, she still found a way to provide services to victims of crimes. Over the course of the last 21 years, Crime Survivors has grown and has become a staple in Orange County. Patricia oversees efforts to help victims of sexual assault, rape, domestic violence, human trafficking, child and elderly abuse, and attempted murder. At an unveiling ceremony in 2018 for the newly opened Crime Survivors Resource Center, Orange County Undersheriff Don Barnes said, "This is a long time coming. I'm so happy that now in Orange County, we have a place where people can go and not feel ashamed or be embarrassed and be empowered to stand up for themselves and survive the travesties that they have endured." This resource center, all spun from Patricia Wenskunas' tenacity, strength, courage, and kindness, is her life's mission. She said, "I made a promise to God that day. As long as you give me my next breath, I will commit the rest of my life for community above self." And 16 years later to the day, I'd like to think I kept that promise. Crime Survivors is now serving Southern California and still trying to be a voice for the voiceless for 21 years strong.
Wow. You know, I guess my thought, and because I've heard this, right? Like I feel like we were raised with a mentality of like, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you just, rub some dirt in it, toughen up, buttercup, all these things, right? To which I feel there's a time and a place for that stuff. But I think what I hear in all of this, what I keep thinking in all of this, it is not that victims don't want to move on, right? It's not that they don't want to move on. It's that they would like to have some resources and some help so that they can not only move on, but move on in a healthy manner, right? So if you don't set a bone properly and that bone heals, if the break heals without a proper setting, you're going to have lifelong problems with that bone, right? Like that's how that works. That's why you have to set bones properly in order for you to use that bone. Let's say it's an arm, use that arm to its greatest ability. If it sets improperly, you can have nerve damage, you can have all this stuff. And I say that all to say, I feel it is the same application with a mental, emotional recovery. You need proper setting. You need resources. You need things in order to move on. Nobody's saying that Patricia wanted to sit and wallow in her victimism, if that's even a word. But she would like some resources to build a life that was taken away from her. And I get it. It wasn't a physical life taken away from her. But like you said, have you ever had something traumatic happen to you and then you have to go back and revisit that area? It's awful.
Yeah.
We went back to our house after Hurricane Katrina happened. And it was awful.
Yeah.
It was a horrible experience to have to go back to that house. And anytime we go back to Mississippi, there's always a little twinge of like, it makes my stomach turn a little bit going back home. You just remember the trauma of Katrina.
Not my friend Katrina, I love you, but the hurricane.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just a couple of bullet points. The first part being a fun fact, which is just such amazing stuff. Patricia actually worked to pass what's called Marsy's Law, and it was passed in California in 2018. And it is a law that gives victims more rights. There are 17 rights, and part of her case was actually written into the law. So once again, an amazing human who turned lemons into lemonade.
I am so overwhelmed with gratitude. Like, that's going to leave its mark for years to come. And that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that I wanted to make sure to notate, and I don't think it's any surprise to anybody here, but Jeffrey, the personal trainer, actually turned out that he wasn't a registered nurse. What do you know? He actually lied about that whole thing, and he actually had no experience in eating disorders. So once again, it just goes to show you that predators are really good at preying on your vulnerabilities right out of the gate, right? I mean, no surprise. And then finally, California only awards restitution for stolen, damaged, destroyed property, but not long after. And not long after, the same judge that presided over Jeffrey's trial sentencing was permanently barred from the courtroom after a state commission determined she had been, quote, abusive and demeaning to defendants, attorneys, witnesses, and prospective jurors.
Oh, so this was a habitual thing.
Okay. And this is what I mean by the behavior in the courtroom influenced the jurors and essentially what they found.
Yeah.
What voted on. That's not the right word, but.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like leading the witness. It's leading the jurors, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, you bully them into thinking that this victim is not a victim, then they're going to think that the crimes of the perpetrator it was a victimless crime, right? You know what I mean?
Sure. And I've listened to Dr. Loftus's her talkings, her words on that, where she was like, you can use certain words, you can act in a certain way, and then people are like, oh, man, that's right, they were aggressive. That's right. I mean, they start remembering stuff or implying the stuff that didn't happen. So yeah, you absolutely have power over people when you're in a position of authority.
Just as a friendly reminder that the interview with Patricia Wenskunas is going to drop on Friday, and we're going to list her wonderful website, the work she does. We're going to all list all those resources in the show notes. And just, again, we wanted to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Patricia herself for her support, collaboration, and openness with us throughout this whole process.
So he did his 120 days. He did his 5 years anger management, 5 years probation, and then he just went about his best life.
He went about his best life.
Okay.
Yep. I don't know any details on him. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he moved or changed names or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and she does talk a little bit more about the whole incident, the whole crime in the interview. And it really is just heartbreaking to hear her voice recounting this whole thing. So,
and I think it's a good reminder that these cases that we present aren't just stories, right?
Right.
They're literal things that have happened to people, and that's one of the reasons why Chelsea and I want to do what we do and bring time and attention and energy and voices to victims and to educate the general public, and and we learn along with you guys half the time, but that's why we're passionate about what we do.
So yeah, like I said, I hope you guys take away from this is definitely, I hope, one of our more encouraging podcasts, that at the end of the day, yes, you can be a victim, but yes, you can also be a survivor. You can be a trailblazer. You can spearhead. You can be a revolutionist. You can be both of those things. You don't have to solely be a victim. And I am so thankful, because it's one thing for somebody like me to say that, and I don't have that story. But again, hearing Patricia and seeing what she did with this, where I was like, great, you know what? I'll see that and I'll raise you. And I just think that's amazing. So
yeah, she really is the coolest. So you guys make sure to check that out.
Yeah, tune in on Friday and finish up kind of it'll put a bow on this case for you, but you can move on. You can heal. You can be a survivor.
And as always, thanks for hanging out with us through this wild and crazy ride.
And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye, guys.
Later, Gators.
Hey,
Wildside Tribe, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Wildside Podcast.
Make sure to tune in on Wildside Wednesdays. New episodes will drop each Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We would love to hear from you, so if you have a wild case recommendation, email us at wildsidepodcast@gmail.com. That's wildside with a C. Or share your thoughts in the comments below.
As always, if you haven't heard it today, you're loved, you're worthy, and you're valuable. And we'll catch you on
The flip side.